In the dead of night, the car headlights cut through the darkness like sharp swords, extending lonely into the distance. I gripped the steering wheel tightly, speeding along the road home, the city's hustle and bustle gradually fading away. The neon lights blurred into a mass outside the car window, like flowing paint, smearing the weary night. Ahead, the congested traffic crawls slowly like a steel dragon, and the journey home is long. The restless mood spread in the carriage, but the warmth of home was shining ahead, supporting me. A silver light tore through the night, stinging the eyes. The disc-shaped flying saucer hovered in midair, its metallic shell reflecting the cold light of the street lamps. That doesn't belong to Earth, silently emitting a suffocating sense of oppression. My heart was pounding, each beat like the knell of doom. Fear surged like a tide, engulfing me in an endless abyss of the unknown. The car was dim, and I suddenly looked up, my eyes filled with fear and curiosity. The phone was tightly clutched in my hand, and the faint light from the screen illuminated my face, flushed with excitement. I frantically adjusted the focus, trying to capture that unbelievable scene. My hands trembled more and more violently, as if trying to snatch the phone from my grasp. I held my breath, afraid of missing any detail, but my fingertips couldn't steady themselves to press the shutter button. Outside the car window, the mysterious light grew stronger, as if mocking my powerlessness. On the midnight highway, a car was speeding alone, breaking the silence of the night. Suddenly, a strange light flashed, and a UFO, like a ghost, raced alongside the car. Cars and UFOs engage in a silent chase in the vast night sky, eerie and mysterious. In the distance, a commercial airliner slowly approached, like a vigilant guardian, watching this unusual competition. The deep night sky, the glow of the UFO intertwined with the lights of the airliner, forming a surreal picture. Suddenly, a shadow cut across the sky, and an unidentified flying object fell like a meteorite. The out-of-control aircraft spun wildly, like a wounded beast struggling desperately. The screech of tearing metal pierced the eardrums, echoing desperately on the empty highway. The aircraft slammed into the roadside guardrail, sparks flying, and debris scattering everywhere. The twisted metal wreckage, like grotesque sculptures, heralded the sudden disaster. The highway trembled in silence, leaving only the acrid smell of burning and endless questions. The piercing alarm grew louder, tearing through the air. The red and blue police lights flashed wildly, illuminating the crash site as if it were the end of the world. The air was filled with the suffocating smell of burning. Debris was scattered everywhere, and metal fragments reflected the dazzling light under the police lights. In the silence, only the alarm was still screaming sharply, announcing the arrival of this disaster. By the broken wreckage, the flickering lights tear through the silence of the night. The figures of the medical staff swayed in the light and shadow, approaching cautiously like ghosts. Sparks from the metal cutting flew in the darkness, and the tools reflected a cold light. The air was filled with a suffocating stillness, as if time itself had frozen here. Each breath feels exceptionally heavy, with anticipation and unease silently spreading. Amidst the screech of tearing metal, the deformed car door was ruthlessly pried open, revealing a chaotic interior. The medical staff, with beads of sweat on their foreheads, carefully rescued the injured person from the twisted steel cage. The stretcher moved slowly. The injured person's face was pale, eyes closed, as if the soul had drifted away from the body. The ambulance siren tore through the sky, heralding a race against death. The crash site was a scene of devastation, with a pungent smell of scorched earth in the air. On the stretcher, two Japanese children in school uniforms, spotless, were out of place compared to the surrounding tragic scene. The boy closed his eyes, his face calm, as if he were just asleep. The girl stared at the sky with wide, empty eyes, without a trace of fear in her gaze. The crowd stirred, and confused whispers spread through the crowd like invisible waves. The chaotic filming scene suddenly quieted down, and the noise gradually subsided. The young nurse looked gloomy, with a hint of pleading in her eyes. She shook her head gently, signaling to stop, as if unwilling to reopen the wound. "Please respect the victim," she said in a low voice, but with undeniable firmness. The air is filled with silent sighs, a remembrance of the deceased, and also a respect for the living. I quietly put down my phone, but my fingertips secretly turned on the video recording on the screen. The screen's faint light reflected on my face, a mix of nervousness and anticipation. This bizarre scene must be recorded and become eternal evidence. The phone camera is aimed forward, and in the darkness, an unknown scene is about to appear. I held my breath, as if holding a Pandora's box. The car engine rumbled low, and the car gradually merged into the city's traffic. In the rearview mirror, the accident scene grew smaller and smaller, as if swallowed by time. Outside the car window, skyscrapers stand like steel giants, and a feeling of oppression comes over me. The clamor of horns and the screech of brakes intertwine to form a jarring urban symphony. Vehicles weave through congested lanes, like beasts lost in a steel jungle. Inside the car, the oppressive atmosphere was spreading, and the silent silence was more suffocating than the noise. City streets were engulfed by angry crowds, and the waves of protest spread like a wildfire out of control. Countless banners waved in the air, like an angry forest, silently accusing injustice. The deafening slogans roared like thunder, echoing through the sky and shaking every inch of the city. The crowd surged like a tidal wave, carrying anger and discontent, advancing irresistibly. Every face was filled with anger and determination, converging into a powerful force. The city trembled with the roar of protests, and a storm was brewing. Outside the car window, the noisy city gradually faded away, and the clamor of the demonstrations could be faintly heard. The car drove into the dark underground garage, as if entering an isolated sanctuary. The headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the mottled marks on the cement wall. We parked the car silently, exchanging glances, as if both were glad to have temporarily escaped the hustle and bustle. The air in the car seemed to become heavy, suppressing worries about the outside world. The silence of the underground garage formed a stark contrast with the hustle and bustle on the ground. I stood alone at the entrance of the parking lot, and a sense of unease washed over me, lingering. My friend is still parking, and I pace back and forth anxiously, trying to dispel the shadows in my heart. The dim lighting at the entrance added to the feeling of oppression. The smell of gasoline filled the air, making me even more uneasy. I felt like I had fallen into an ice cave, unable to move, and fear instantly gripped my heart. At the entrance to the parking lot, a corpse hangs upside down on the gate, and crimson blood drips onto the ground. A sharp weapon pierced the body, and blood spread on the ground like ink, gathering into a sickening pool of blood. In the deathly still parking lot, only the wind howled, as if it were the whisper of the dead. The air was filled with a thick, suffocating smell of blood, and the scent of death enveloped the entire space. The parking lot was deathly silent, with 2 cars parked there alone, as if they had swallowed all sound. The car windows were tightly closed, reflecting distorted images, hinting at the unknown horrors within the car. A corpse leaned against the seat, its bizarre hairstyle resembling a microphone head, silently accusing the cruelty of fate. In another car, there was also a cold body, and the desperate posture was frozen into an eternal tragedy. The air is filled with the scent of death, which is chilling and terrifying, as if every inch of space is filled with the whispers of vengeful spirits. Fear washed over me like a tide, and I felt as if I were drowning. I looked around frantically, searching for any straw to clutch at. The parking lot was empty and cold, echoing with my desperate breaths. I need a look, a voice, to prove that I am not alone falling into madness. Despair, like a venomous snake, tightly coils around me, and the feeling of suffocation intensifies. In a corner of the parking lot, I was startled to see a familiar face. Is an older alumnus, with deep lines etched on his face by the years. One of his arms was muscular and bulging with veins, as if it contained infinite power, but the other arm was surprisingly thin, a stark contrast to the strong body, which was puzzling. I held on to him tightly, my fingertips turning white from the force. "Murder," I repeated incoherently, my voice trembling. I looked at him almost imploringly. "Please, call the police." A trace of worry flashed across his eyes, and his brows were furrowed. His expression seemed particularly complicated under the dim lights of the parking lot. My hand still clutched his sleeve, as if grasping the last straw. A car sped towards him, tires screeching against the ground, the piercing sound of brakes shattering the silence of the parking lot. The car door slammed open, and my friend jumped out, looking around anxiously, his eyes filled with fear. Another friend anxiously dialed the phone, beads of sweat forming on their forehead, but the signal remained unreachable. Despair spread through the air. Every attempt ended in failure, as if swallowed by darkness. He angrily pounded his phone, as if to vent all his helplessness and fear. The parking lot was empty and oppressive, echoing with despair, like a giant cage. The empty parking lot echoed with disturbing recordings. The repeated message, like a ghost, drifted between the concrete pillars. The heavy breathing sounded particularly clear in the dead silence. "We are trapped, and all contact with the outside world has been completely cut off." In the darkness, fear surged like a tide, with nowhere to escape. Recording again and again, the despairing atmosphere spread in the parking lot. We bought drinks, and the icy liquid tried to dispel the anxiety in our hearts. Fingertips gliding across the screen, dialing the emergency number repeatedly. The parking lot was empty and oppressive, echoing with the sound of despair. Each dial feels like grasping at the last straw, only to helplessly slip away. The parking lot was empty and depressing, and the signal was still a desperately blank space. The wave of protests has spiraled out of control, like a wild horse that has broken free. The decision to evacuate was made in silence, with an atmosphere of unease. The roar of the engine broke the silence of the parking lot, heralding a hasty escape. Tires rub against the ground, making a screeching sound, and fear is accelerating. The vehicle sped away, leaving only an empty parking lot and endless unknowns. The empty parking lot echoed with a desperate moan. A figure sprawled on the ground in a large character pose, with iron chains mercilessly locking her limbs. The cold gleam of the iron chain reflected her helpless struggle. Pain washed over her face like a tide, her features contorted, revealing utter despair. Her eyes were filled with fear, as if she saw an endless abyss. Under the dim lights of the parking lot, a sense of despair is spreading. We rushed forward, our fingertips trembling, trying to unlock the heavy chains. The chains wrapped coldly around her body, each link like a merciless shackle. Her husband, with all his might, and with his rough hands breaking the skin, finally untied the bonds on her wrists. I clenched my teeth, my hands trembling, as I tried to unlock the shackles on my ankles again and again. The chain fell to the ground with a harsh sound, echoing in the empty parking lot. She regained her freedom and collapsed weakly to the ground, her eyes vacant, as if she had lost all hope. Doubt surged like a tide, drowning all trust. Could it be that vendor? His eyes were filled with an unknown shadow. Did that vendor poison our drinks? Or is there a murderer among my friends? The seeds of suspicion grew wildly in my heart, and the boat of friendship was tottering in the dark. The woman broke free, collapsed to the ground, and the sound of rapid breathing echoed in the empty parking lot. She looked up at the ceiling weakly, her eyes filled with the fear of surviving a disaster. The oppressive atmosphere among team members is like an invisible net, suffocating. The air was filled with tension and suspicion, like the calm before the storm. In the empty parking lot, a lone lamp swayed in the darkness, casting a long shadow. In the distance, the lights of the convenience store are like a beacon, guiding the lost travelers. I pointed to the light and suggested going to that temporary haven. The convenience store lights looked particularly warm in the cold night, as if beckoning weary bodies. The parking lot was empty and silent, with only my lonely figure. Friends were persuading, but in my eyes, there was only the direction of home. A familiar environment is my only solace at this moment. I stubbornly walked towards home, with the helpless gazes of my friends behind me. In the familiar parking lot, I just want to get back to the home that gives me a sense of security as soon as possible. I stopped abruptly, as if pulled by an invisible force, and stood there stiffly. Witnessing that horrifying scene, fear surged into my heart like a tide, nearly engulfing me. Go straight home? No, that's simply asking for trouble, with the shadow of misfortune following closely. I must go to crowded places to dispel this lingering fear with the noisy crowd. The parking lot was empty and silent, with only my solitary figure swaying. I clenched my fists tightly, my nails digging deep into my palms, trying to dispel the chill within. The empty parking lot echoed with a harsh quarrel, like a blade cutting through the silence. Go home! Get out! The two voices intertwined, like two hurricanes colliding fiercely. Fear surged like a tide, and in the dim light, every shadow became hideous. The paranoid emotions condensed in the air, oppressively suffocating, like the calm before the storm. The sound of arguing echoed endlessly in the empty parking lot, leaving behind endless suspicion and unease. The empty parking lot echoed with the sound of despair. The friend's strong arm pointed towards the security room, which was the only hope. Go check the security room. Maybe they have a working phone. The friend's voice sounded particularly clear in the empty parking lot. The security room's lights flickered in the distance, like a lighthouse in the dark. We held our breath and slowly approached the security room, our footsteps as light as a cat's. The crack of the door was slightly ajar, like a peeping eye, and a flickering light poured out from it, mysterious and dangerous. The light and shadow intertwine on the ground, like a silent invitation, enticing us to the unknown abyss. The air was filled with tension, and each breath became cautious, as if a sleeping beast would be awakened if one wasn't careful. The security guard lay helplessly on the table, and the blood slowly spread, shocking. Blood dripped, in the silent room, like the whisper of death. The monitor screen was filled with static, frozen at the silent moment of death. The surveillance footage is still, as if time has also frozen at this moment. The security guard's body stiffened, and he slumped over the table, unable to move again. In the silent security room, only the flickering light of the monitor reflected the suffocating death. The friend's trembling hand reached for the guard's cold carotid artery. Dead silence. Not a single pulse. The guard lay there stiffly, as if time had frozen on him. Fear surged like a tide, and my friend's face was as pale as a sheet of paper. We retreated step by step, as if an invisible monster was approaching us. In the dark office, fear, like an invisible net, tightly ensnared us. The parking lot was empty and gloomy, and a sense of despair spread through the crowd. Let's split up, someone shouted, their voice echoing in the empty space, tinged with a hint of tremor. Fear spread like a virus, and everyone was eager to escape, as if a demon was chasing them. I know this is a mistake, but panic has taken over, and reason has been thrown to the wind. People scattered and fled, their figures appearing and disappearing in the shadows, as if lost in a dark maze. In the parking lot, only desperate echoes and helpless sighs remained, foreshadowing the impending disaster. My friend and I walked towards the parking lot exit, each step heavy, as if treading on a heartbeat. The oppressive silence echoed endlessly in the empty parking lot, and fear surged like a tide. Shadows are looming, as if countless eyes are lurking, watching us. The light at the exit is getting closer, but it can't dispel the lingering fear that hangs over my heart. In the deathly silent night sky of the parking lot, a shrill scream suddenly exploded, piercing the eardrums like a sharp blade. That was the wife's desperate cry for help, echoing in the empty parking lot, chilling and terrifying. Adrenaline surged through the body like electricity, fear and anger intertwined, and the legs ran uncontrollably. Every second felt like an eternity, and my wife's screams were getting closer and more desperate. In the darkness, unknown fear follows like a shadow, and we desperately rushed towards that darkness, towards the direction of the scream. The parking lot was empty and silent. A body lay in a pool of blood. The wound on the throat was shocking. The blood spread on the ground like a blooming, yaoyant flower, silently telling the cruelty of death. His wife is missing, and an atmosphere of unease hangs in the air. The killer may still be lurking in the shadows. In the dark corner, it seemed as if a pair of eyes were hidden, peering at the scene of the crime. The silent parking lot is shrouded in the shadow of death, and a game of cat and mouse is about to begin. In the depths of the dark garage, a hidden staircase entrance suddenly appears, as if leading to an unknown abyss. The shadows at the stairwell were heavy, like the open mouth of a giant beast waiting for its prey. Could this be a trap? An atmosphere of unease hangs in the air, making one hesitant. Should we venture into this darkness and explore the secrets hidden deep within the garage? We stepped into the abyss-like darkness, and the light of our phones swayed in the empty parking lot. The air was cold and piercing, as if carrying the dampness and decay from the depths of the earth. Darkness surged like a tide, engulfing our faint light. The glow of the phone screen illuminated our tense faces, appearing particularly pale in the darkness. Each step felt like entering an unknown fear, with the echoes amplifying in the empty parking lot. In a dark corner of the parking lot, a crude altar suddenly appears, exuding an unsettling aura. The surface of the altar is covered with distorted symbols, like some kind of ancient writing, or like crazy graffiti. The dark red bloodstains had dried, appearing in eerie black in the dim light. A faint smell of blood permeated the air, mixed with the smell of car exhaust in the parking lot, making people feel sick. This is not just random killing, but a meticulously planned ritual, concealing a deeper secret. The symbols on the altar seemed to whisper, recounting a dark past and foreshadowing an even more terrifying future. In the darkness, a figure slowly emerged, as if crawling out from the depths of hell. A flash of cold steel and a chilling coldness permeated the air. That's a friend with bulging muscles, a familiar face that's now twisted and unfamiliar. His eyes were vacant and wild, as if controlled by some evil force. The blade trembled, reflecting his bewildered and pained expression. A dark parking lot, a tragedy is about to unfold. He lunged like a beast, his scream tearing through the silence of the parking lot. Crazy eyes, a distorted face, he seemed to have lost his mind. We fought back with all our might, using our fists and feet, trying to stop his crazy actions. Each impact was accompanied by a desperate roar, and fear permeated the air. Fight desperately. We must stop him and disarm his madness. In the parking lot, a fierce fight came to an abrupt end, and he collapsed to the ground. An icy steel bar ruthlessly pierced his body, and blood instantly stained the ground. Life vanished as quickly as a candle in the wind. He died, carrying endless regrets and unwillingness. Darkness shrouded his face. Was he really the only culprit? The air is filled with the scent of death, and the truth is hidden in the shadows, waiting to be revealed. Stepping out of the garage, the dazzling sunlight made people squint. The sun shines on the empty street, as if the noise of the protest never existed. The empty street, with the sun mercilessly shining down, leaving only emptiness and silence. Everything is over, leaving only empty streets that look particularly desolate in the sunlight. The streets were bustling with people, and everything seemed so peaceful, with the sun shining on everyone's faces. The laughter of children came from afar, and the wind rustled the leaves on the side of the road. Everything is so normal that it's unsettling, like the calm before the storm. The sunlight was too dazzling, making one begin to doubt whether everything in front of them was real. Is this really reality? Or are we still immersed in that nightmare? On the empty street, two people stood facing each other, their shadows elongated in the darkness. In each other's eyes, they saw each other's pale and haggard faces, weary and guarded. The former trust shattered like thin ice, leaving only the chill of suspicion spreading in the air. A silent gaze, like two wounded beasts, probing and guarding. The air seemed to freeze, and every second became long and agonizing. The distance between them is like an insurmountable chasm, bottomless. We walked silently on the empty street, the distance between us seemingly widened by an invisible fear. Everyone's face was filled with exhaustion and terror, and the scene of that night lingered like a nightmare. The dim yellow light of the streetlights fell on the ground, stretching our shadows and also stretching the unease in our hearts. The truth is shrouded in a mist, and we seem to be in a vortex from which we can never escape. The laughter of the past has faded away, leaving only endless silence and fear of the unknown.